All right, Algebra 1, we are going to do a very quick, just quick single problem review over factoring trinomials, which is what we worked last week, Thursday, Friday, just to remind yourself over the weekend. So with factoring trinomials, we had what was called the box and diamond method. So we always started by creating a box and a little X. That was our box and diamond method, even though one of those isn't a diamond. If you never mind. But we always started with this. So the first thing we did was we used that X that we created. We took our first and last term of our trinomial and we multiplied them together and put it in the numerator of our, or the top part of our X. So 5x squared times negative 2 is going to give me negative 10x squared. We then took our middle number and we put that in the bottom of our X, which is going to be 9x. So once we had those two pieces filled out, we had to come up with two numbers that multiplied together to get our numerator, top part of our X, and added together to get the bottom part of our X. So two numbers that multiply to create the top, add to get my bottom. So I essentially need to think of two numbers that multiply to get negative 10, add to get 9. The easiest way to start doing this is coming up with numbers that multiply to get negative 10. So what are some numbers that multiply to get negative 10? Well, I know 5 times negative 2 equals negative 10, because that's what we started with. But does 5 and negative 2 add to get 9? No. I could go backwards. I could try negative 5 times 2 equals negative 10. But do negative 5 and 2 add to get 9? Not that either. Other numbers that multiply to get negative 10 is negative 10 times 1 gives me negative 10. Can those add together to get 9? That adds negative 9. So I know I'm close. If I flip it and try to do negative 1 times 10, that multiplies together to get negative 10. And that also adds together to get positive 9. So I know negative 1 and 10 are my two numbers. So sometimes you have to do a little guessing and checking on this in order to figure out what are those multiples to get it right. So we had positive 10x and negative 1x can multiply together to get negative 10 squared, or negative 10x squared, and then add together to get 9x. So now I need to fill in my box. So my first two pieces I'm going to fill in is my top left hand is always going to be my first term of my trinomial, which is 5x squared. My bottom right hand is always going to be my last term, which is negative 2. And then I'm going to take my other two numbers that I just came up with and fill them in for my other two boxes. It doesn't matter which one goes in which. So I'm going to put 10x down here and negative 1x up here. I'm going to try to grab this whole thing. Oop. That's not letting me. There we go. All right, I'm giving myself a little bit more space. All right, now I need to fill in the outside of my box. So remember, this was like that multiplying the box area method, except backwards. We had to come up with numbers that multiplied on the outside that created those inside pieces. So I need to think, what numbers multiply together to create 5x squared? Well, I know because each of those terms have an x, or it's an x squared. I know each of these terms are always going to have an x in them. And I know 5 is only created through multiplication with 1 and 5. So one of these is going to have a 1. One of these is going to have a 5. Well, both of these terms, 5 and negative 1 don't have a greatest common factor, but 5 and 10 have a greatest common factor of 5, while 5 and negative 1 only have a greatest common factor of 1. So that's going to tell me where I should put that 5 and where should I put that 1. Looking through those rows should help you figure out which of those should have the 5 and which of those should have a 1. 1x times what number is going to create negative 1x? Well, 1x times negative 1 creates negative 1x. 5 times what number creates 10x? 5 times 2 creates 10x. Or 5x times 2 creates 10x. And then 2 times negative 1 should create negative 2. So I know these are going to be my two factors. I'm going to have 5x minus 1, and then 1x plus 2. Now, once again, if we wanted to go that extra step and solve for these factors to figure out what are my actual x-intercepts, all I had to do was set each of these factors equal to 0. So I'd have 5x minus 1 equals 0. So in order to get my x-intercept, I would just have to inverse my 1 by adding it. Equals 1, divide by 5, and I would get x equals 1/5, or x equals, not 1/2, 1/5. X equals 1/5, or x equals 0.2, same number. If I were to do my other version, I would have 1x, which is just the same as x plus 2 equals 0. On this one, all I have to do is inverse my 2, and I get x equals -2 as my 2 x-intercepts. So my 2 x-intercepts would be happen at x equals 1/5 and x equals -2. And that's how we factor and solve for our x-intercepts. Hopefully this video was helpful, quick reminder. We're going to have a good amount of time today to practice and review over this stuff in preparation for that upcoming assessment next week.